Хорошо, да, давай я тебе.
Так нормально?
Да, нормально. Смотри, баланс белого. Ты вручную поставь. 4200.
Ой, черт, не то. Привет.
Где трикастер стоит?
Вот там, на полу. Где на этой камере баланс белого выставляется? Ручные настройки точки.
Вот тут должен. Так, у тебя сейчас стоит.
Так, чтобы презентация была видна и...
Мануал. Нифига.
А, ну это камера темная, да, это я не спорю.
Вообще пофиг.
Ну давайте такой. Запись будет вести в YouTube.
Да?
Да.
А я хотел репортажик.
Возьми такую камеру.
Я возьму.
Этот просто
А если я зебру включу, что-нибудь будет, не?
чего?
Зебра.
Главное, чтобы вот это работало на запись.
Так, есть. White баланс. О. Нажимаешь что-то. Блин, что у нас? Баланс не белого, а что проблема? На этой камере. Ну смотри, белая, вот это вот сама презентация.
Да.
А он, видишь, он рыжий. Вот как-то 5200 я обычно 5300 ставлю в помещении. Открыли на максимум. Светло. Так, ты не смотрел вторую камеру?
Нет, я только это видел.
Окей.
Ого.
Что здесь снимать-то вообще?
Ну, видишь, чувачок.
Нет, ну, она будет стоять и все.
Она будет стоять, надо будет временами крупно брать.
Так, до скольки?
Ну, по-моему, 2 часа, до 18:30.
А, блин. Ну, уйдет, что я уйду, ладно. Ты же все равно здесь? Ты же здесь?
Да.
Вот. А нет, написано 17:30.
Да? А, ну 17:30. Я просто не помню сам. Помню, что там полчаса.
А что, ты специально для этого пришел? На форму?
Да, мне Виталий писал, сказал, что ну, помочь. Приказ тоже поставить принести камеру. Ну, а Коля, человек Коля пошел за камерой репортаж поснимать. Но с ним, наверное, будешь ходить или тут. Можешь тут поснимать, потом пойти с ним, потом опять сюда, потом опять с ним. Как ты хочешь.
Так, нам нужно изменить шутер спид. Ой-ой-ой. На 25 кадров в секунду. Да, мы просто можем ирис закрыть. А white balance поставим автоматом, потому что Леша сказал все зеленое.
Что-то белое, а что-то зеленое. Прошу понять.
Он сказал темно, поэтому сделаем светлее.
Ну да. Она просто будет стоять и снимать.
Угу. Ну, сюда бы.
Там дисплей не надо нажать с экрана все убрать, или там не видно было ничего. Сейчас
Да можно убрать. Алло, смотри, проверяй. Я на автомат поставил. Сейчас поставлю желтит. А на этой камере фиговый баланс белого, я тебе скажу. Ну, смотри, у меня... Да, вот 5500 поставил, посмотри. Должно быть. Да, я здесь. И это, посмотри, не должно мерцать, я поставил 25 кадров. Зеленая. Давай 6300 поставлю. Он либо зеленый, либо желтый, ты выбирай. Вот, сейчас 6300 поставил. Я понял. С задержкой. Раз, два, три, четыре, пять, шесть, семь, восемь, девять, десять, 11, 12. Человек 20. Желтая. Я тебе говорю, тут нет среднего. Вот, 5800 поставил, по свету посмотри. ну вот я 5800 поставил. Я понял, что 6300 это желто для тебя. И светлее. Ну, у меня видно. Ну, вот так я сделал, потемнее, посмотри. Ты мой голос слышишь, что ли? Там еще? А что ты микрофон отсюда, а не от него взял? Можно же XLR-ами сразу оттуда взять, со стойки. Раз, два, три. Делаю. Блин. Назад. Все, окей, я тебя понял. Все, нормально. Давай. В общем, смотрите, ребята, основное, что нужно настроить на камере перед началом съемок. Туда, тут слышно.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. On behalf of ITMO University, I would like to welcome you here. And I would like to thank our colleagues who made it possible. First of all, it's British Council because we're doing it in we are doing it with them, and thank you, Maria, for bringing Tony here, for giving us this unique opportunity to listen to him and maybe even have time to ask him questions. And definitely to ask him questions. And also today here we have Ivanov, president of St. Petersburg English Language Teachers Association. And we would also like to tell you that in the end of this weekend, we are having a workshop devoted to academic writing, and also they have a conference that is called Open World of English that will take place 15th and 16th of December next week. And for ITMO University, it is extremely important to have Tony here because, of course, we understand the importance of teaching English for academic purposes, lecture, this talk, and
I hope you will enjoy it too.
and have interesting evening. Thank you.
Can I just add?
Right?
I
Please.
just wanted to say hi to those who are watching us online, because we are live streaming this presentation, so hello to everyone who is online with us today. And to welcome you all again, and thank you for coming.
Over to me. So, just to start, what I'd like to say is that if at any point you have any questions, please just ask them. Don't feel that you have to wait until the end. I'm quite comfortable dealing with questions. If you have a question that I feel would be better answered later on, then I'll say so. If you have a question that I feel I need to answer in person, then I'll say that as well. The idea is that we will have 20 to 30 minutes at the end of this for questions, but if there's anything, any point where you feel, I'm not sure I understand, or can you clarify, or even if you disagree, right, that's fine, stop me. I give lectures all the time. I am very comfortable with people stopping me and asking questions. The other thing to check is whether people at the back, hello, can hear me. Is this loud enough? Good. Okay, I'm not using the microphone because I move around quite a lot to try and make sure that the people who are sitting over here don't feel left out. So, to introduce myself, this is me. I've divided it into two areas. There's the Toni Принс over here and the Toni Принs over here. The Toni Принs over here is related to the University of East Anglia. Anybody here who has heard of the University of East Anglia? No? Oh, okay. My colleagues at the University of East Anglia will not be happy about that. It's ranked number 14 in the UK this year from the from the Times Guide to Universities. It's number 1 in the country for environmental science, number 2 in the country for pharmacy. So in some subjects, it is one of the leading universities. My role at that university is twofold. That I work on pre-sessional and in-sessional courses. Pre-sessional courses are dedicated solely to helping students to improve their academic English before they go on to a master's or a bachelor's degree. So the students often come for 2 to 3 months directly before starting their masters because their academic English is not good enough or because their general English level is not good enough. And then the second thing I do, as you will see here, I'm pointing when I have a laser, is this in-sessional. And in-sessional is where I and my team of teachers help students who are working at the university. And so we go into the departments, we work with economics, law, science, development studies, business, and we teach students in those subjects. So what we try and do is to make sure that we are teaching English that is relevant to economics, English that is relevant to science. Do we have teachers here who are teaching science, not teaching English, but teaching science? Hands up. Okay. Do we have anybody here who's teaching economics? No? Science? All right. So you know that the English that you require for science is very different than the English you require for business. Yes? Good. We agree about something. So that is one of the things that we try and do at the university, is to make sure that it is appropriate for those subjects. The other area that I do, which is over here, which is NILE. NILE is the Norwich Institute for Language Education. And what it is an institution for teacher training. And we have developed a number of online teacher training courses in TEEP, which is Teaching English for Academic Purposes. So we've had a number of teachers from Russia who've come on these courses. The TEEP course is an 8-week online course. It deals with a lot of the areas that I'm going to be talking to you about. So if you're interested in looking at these areas further, then what I would recommend is just get in touch with me. This is my email address, which is t.prints@uea.ac.uk. And I can give you more details, or alternatively, you can just take a photo of these email addresses and go online and you can see the the information that they have. I'll talk to you later about these courses. I'll answer any questions that you have about these courses. But what I wanted to do, first of all, I talked about myself, but I wanted to get an idea of who I'm talking to. So I just wanted to get a quick idea of who you are. Now, when I went to Samara a couple of days ago and talked to them about the features of academic English, I had a number of students in the audience, which was interesting because I was talking to them about how they should be writing. Are there any people here who would classify themselves as students? Yay! Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, 7 students. Excellent. All right. And we had 3 or 4 content teachers. Are there people who are teaching the content? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. 10. So 10. And English teachers, people who are focused. Okay, so around 15, 20. All right, so we've got a good split. All right. So that gives me an idea of what I need to be talking about. Okay, so as you saw from the handout, from the title of this lecture, I'm going to be talking about the features of academic English. And I'm going to be talking about the features in relation to the 4 skills. Now, what you will notice about my presentation is that these are the only bullet points you will see. Right? I don't use bullet points in my presentations because I think it's very boring for you to look at. And it's very boring for me to just read off the slides. So what I'm going to spend a lot of time doing is this thing, right? Where the slides move and you have things to look at and I will explain what it means, right? So if you want to take pictures, by all means do, but recognize that there will be moving and adding and adding. There will be no slide that is static. Okay? What I would recommend more is get hold of the presentation later and have a look at it for yourself. What I'm also going to be doing is giving the British Council a copy of this presentation as a screencast. So what that means is that I will produce a 10 to 15 minute version of it that just goes over it in terms of me saying, and now what we need to focus on is blah, blah, blah. Not this first bit, but the content. So, we've got the 4 skills. Now, in terms of academic English, we also have these 2 areas, right? We have study skills and critical thinking. And I would argue, and a lot of the course books that are being produced now for academic English by Cambridge, by Garnet Publishing, by Longman, by other people, by Oxford, either include these areas very explicitly, or they make mention of them. Right? There are also a lot of books that are focused on study skills. Books by Stella Cottrell, for example, focuses on study skills. If you would like any recommendations of books that I would suggest include critical thinking, or books that make use of study skills, please get in touch with me. I'm quite happy to do that. What I'm not going to be talking about today is those 2 areas. Right? I will be focusing on these 4 skills, principally because of time, but also because of making sure that it's as clear as possible. Am I being clear at the moment? Yes? Hands up, yes? Hands up, no? Okay, good, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is start with writing. Start with the features of academic writing, and then I'm going to move into speaking. Now, writing compares to speaking in terms of general English and in terms of academic features. But we also need to look at reading and listening and how they feed into writing and speaking, and also how they connect to each other. But rather than talking about this in general, what I'm going to do is focus on 2 areas. Right? And that's what I meant by the moving. See? Slides move. Okay, so I'm going to be focusing on 2 areas. The assessment of academic English and the development of academic English. Right? So what we're talking about really is the teaching and the testing of academic English. Now, when we talk about this, very often what we have is a situation where we're talking about the teaching, the learning, and then the testing. But often what we have is a situation where this is reversed, where what we start with is the testing. So we start by specifying what we're going to test, and then we decide how we're going to teach it. So we specify the criteria for testing, we specify the items that we're going to test and how we're going to test it, we develop the tests, and then we decide from that what we need to teach in order to be able to get the students through the test. From interest, hands up how many people would say that they start with the teaching, and hands up how many would start with the testing. So how many of you think about the teaching first? Hands up. And hands up how many start with the testing? Oh, good. That makes me feel much better. Okay, so we start with the testing, because that's what I'm going to start with, right? I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying that in most situations, in most cases, we start with the testing. Right? Now, one of the most common frameworks that we use in terms of testing is that of IELTS. Right? So IELTS is a very robust framework. It's a very common framework. When people are thinking about IELTS, yes, you can take a picture now. It's not going to move anymore. And if you want to take a picture, there you go. So when people think about testing, often they are looking at these areas of criteria. Right? They're looking at task response, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, grammar. And these are the main areas that, that IELTS tests in relation to those different topics. So generally what you will see in IELTS criteria is that at the different bands, 7 or 6 or 5, you have 3 items that are dealing with addressing the task. Or you have 3 items that are dealing with the position. So you have 1, 2, 3, and then on the next level you would have them repeated, but the description is slightly different. Okay, so my problem with IELTS is that while I think it is very robust and very reliable as a test, I have problems with it when it comes to... Sorry, don't worry, don't panic. Just let me try to turn it off. It was a very nice ringtone, thank you very much. But IELTS is very robust, very reliable. The problem is, as you can see from this, it doesn't really specify an academic content. Is there anybody here who actually uses IELTS as a tool, as a testing tool? Yes? Okay. So one of the reasons that I'm using this and referring to this in relation to academic English is because I know, I've done a lot of work with the High School of Economics in Moscow, that one of the things that they do is they have to use IELTS as a test because it's reliable, because it's robust. Right? But what I'm going to do is suggest how we can use IELTS, but use it in terms of academic English. So what I'm going to try and do is to specify addressing the task. What does that mean in academic English? Right? And looking over here at the grammar, right? It says here varied complexity. Well, in terms of academic English, what does that mean? Because we need to be able to tell the students, if you are writing academically, this is what your tutor will expect, or this is what you will be marked on when you're writing in terms of academic English. Right? So, what I'm going to do is look at each of these in terms of what they mean academically. Okay? So, here we go. That's what I'm going to try and do. So, these are some of the areas that I'm going to be looking at in terms of academic English. And they come from this source. Now, if you want more information about these, then what I would recommend is that you go to this website. It's just uefap.com. Right? It's a very, very, very good website. The person who created it is called Andy Gillet. Right? He created it almost single-handedly. It was started about 10 years ago and has been built and built and built and built. Right? He has examples of these different categories. He has exercises that students can do. So one of the reasons that I'm using this is because there are a lot of resources related to it. That if you're teaching, if you are an English teacher, you can direct your students to this website and say, here is more information about it. If you are interested in it in terms of as a content teacher, then you can look at the descriptions. As a student, hands up students, again, right? Go there immediately. Okay? This is probably the most, it will be much, after this lecture, you will be saying, thank you, Tony, not for what you told us, but for telling us to go here. Okay? I know I'm being realistic, this might be very interesting for you, but what is more important is there are exercises there are examples, everything that you need. And it's not just limited to these. Okay? So, these are the categories, these are the topics. Right? But what I'm saying is that a topic, like cohesion and coherence, or like lexical range from IELTS, is not really very useful unless we can specify what it means. Right? So, what I'm going to do is talk about these individually, right? In terms of what they each mean and how they are related to IELTS. Right? So, each one of these has, no wait, don't do the yet, right? One more, okay? Okay, you can take a picture now. Right? There's going to be no more little blue things, alright? So, each one of these, as I said before, on the website you have an explanation, you have an example. Right? So, where it says state the purpose, or the POV, the point of view, on the website there is an example of this, there's a description of this. Right? But, what I thought when I did this talk in Samara, the feedback that I got after the talk was, Tony, that was very interesting, but here there was a lot of information and some of it I didn't really understand. Right? So, what I thought would be good this time is to give you the opportunity to say to me, Tony, can you explain what this means? Right? Or can you just give an example? Right? So, what I'm going to do is just give you 2 minutes to do 2 things. Right? The first thing that I want you to do is just look at these and think, is there anything that you want me to explain? But the second thing that I want you to do is to tell me which of these things for you is most difficult. Right? As a student, or in terms of teaching, which things are most difficult for you to teach or for you to use? Right? You can talk to the person next to you if you want. You've got 1 minute, right, to think. What do you want me to explain? What is most difficult? Are you not talking to each other because you don't like each other, or are you not talking to each other? You're still reading? Okay, shut up. I should give you another 30 seconds. Okay, so, first question. Which of these things do you think is most difficult to teach or to use? Hands up for formality. Most difficult to teach or to use? No? Complexity? No? Precision? 1. Okay, precision, we have 1. Objectivity? 2, 3, 4. Okay. Explicitness? No? Hedging? That's strange. Because when I was in Samara, people were saying, oh Tony, you must explain hedging more. We don't really understand what you mean by hedging. Everybody here understands hedging? Okay. So, alright. Well, I'll come back. All right. So, responsibility, hands up if you think it's difficult. 1. Only 1, 2. 3. Okay. 4. Alright. And accuracy. Okay. Alright. So let's go back to hedging. Right? So in terms of hedging in academic English for an English tutor, what you are expected to do is to indicate the strength of your position, or to indicate the extent to which you believe the evidence is clear or not. So, for instance, let me give you an example. Right? You could say it is clear. Right? It seems. It may. Okay, which of these, we'll do hands up again because I know people hate talking, right? So, how many people would use this? It is clear. Hands up. Right, okay. If you did this, writing an essay for an English tutor, they would come and shoot you, right? Because for an English tutor, in an English situation, or for an English journal, what they are very often critical of is writing that seems to be over-emphatic, or that seems to be stating something that is 100% true or 100% when it cannot be because the evidence is not strong enough, or that it cannot be because there is some element of uncertainty. Right? So in academic English, for an English tutor or for an English journal, it would be much more likely to use this or this or this. Right? And what I've found talking to Russian tutors, Russian students, is that this requirement to hedge your opinions, to appear uncertain, is uncomfortable. Right? It's like, well, I know it's true. It's obvious it's true. Right? Why am I saying that it's not, or it seems clear, when I am sure it is clear? So, this is an aspect of English when I am teaching, and especially when I'm teaching Russians, or similar language backgrounds, I am indicating that you have to evaluate the evidence, and you have to use this kind of language. Right? Another example, just check the time. Another example would be that we would ask students to use different kinds of reporting verbs. Right? So a reporting verb is something that evaluates a position. Right? We would say evidence or research states, or research by Kaplan claims, or research in 1956 shows. Right? Is everybody clear about the difference between these three verbs? If the students say yes, I will be very surprised. If the teachers say yes, I'm fine with that. But if the students say yes, I'm going to be like, what? States is used when we want to talk about research in a neutral way. We are saying, I'm not saying it's true, I'm not saying it's false, I am just telling you what the research is. I'm describing the research. Right? Claims is indicating that there is disagreement about the research, that some people disagree with it, some people agree with it, or that you disagree with it. Right? So there is an element of disagreement, either in the academic community or from your point of view. Shows is indicating that you have proof, you have clear evidence that this is correct, that you agree with it. Right? So again, this is an example that I give students of how you are evaluating the evidence. Okay? Alright, so that's hedging. I've got a couple of minutes that I can use to explain any of it. Yes?
You have spoken about shows, and what about
Yes. So if you say something like demonstrates, proves, then it would be again this area here. Right? If you want a very, very, very good book on this subject, John Swales. Do you know John Swales? No? Okay. Again, email me if you want it, but Swales, writing for graduate students. Right? John Swales, writing for graduate students. John Swales was one of the first people to do discourse and genre analysis, so to look at writings in different genres. And what he has produced is work that helps students to understand this and helps teachers to teach it. Very good series of books. Okay. Are there any other areas here you would like me to explain? Everything else is clear? Yes? Nobody wants to volunteer? Okay, I will go through, and if there's anything, then you stop. Alright, so, as I said before, what we're going to do is to take these areas, right? So we're saying that complexity includes these different parts. Right? And so what we are going to do is to map these to the different areas. Right? So we're going to show that complexity includes these things, and if we want to mark using IELTS, or if we want to mark using lexical resource, or coherence and cohesion, then we can say to the students, in academic English, when you are using a range of vocabulary, you are doing something that is lexically dense, which means that it's using a lot of content words, it's using a lot of words that have function, rather than words that have service words, words that have a cohesion effect. Right? So we can move these to this, and we can do the same here, and we can say to the students, academic English, in terms of grammar, is subordinate, is passive, and is noun-based. Yes, you had your hand up, or you were just stretching? No? Okay, just stretching. All right. So, what I would suggest is on your sheet, right, you have a sheet here, okay? So on here, right, this is the list of these items, right? So what you can do, if you want to, as I'm going through this, is you can note on here, right, that lexically varied and lexically dense goes with lexical resource. Right? So if we are assessing, or if we are writing, then these things go with lexical resource. These things go with grammar. Okay? So the idea of this is so that you can note it and decipher it. So you will see here, these areas go with lexis and grammar. The next block, the formality, again, we can map it, and we map it in this way, so that formality, we have non-colloquial, and then we have no contractions. Right? So again, it's mapping to lexical resource, and you can say, if you want to write in a formal way, you are not using colloquialisms, you're not using contractions, and you're marking it in terms of lexical resource, grammar, and language. Similarly, in terms of precision, right, we are now indicating priority, and we're giving exact measure. Right? Just to check, when we talk about indicating priority, in a student essay, what would you expect to see to indicate the priority? What words would you expect a student to use to indicate priority? Somebody said something. First of all, okay, now. All right. Sorry. Yes, you're right. Almost, yes. Almost a huge mistake writing on there. Okay, now. So this lady over here said first of all. Right? Now, when I see student essays, very often what I see is that they are writing in a way that they think is evaluative, right? But is, to me, more like a shopping list. Right? So, for instance, let's take the example. Hands up, how many people here have an iPhone? Hands up. Okay? Hands up, how many people have another kind of phone? Okay, people who have another kind of phone. Why? iPhone is the best. Okay, so why? Why do you have other kinds of phones? Okay, no money. Okay, so it's cheap. Alright, so it's cheap. Okay. Yep, and?
Everybody has an iPhone.
Okay, so you want to be an individual. Alright. Individual. Alright.
The battery lives for 2 weeks. The battery lives 2 weeks.
Okay, battery. Alright. Good. Alright. And? Okay, so it's this is open. Yes? Yours is open and mine is closed. Yes, okay. Alright, now the question is, hands up, who thinks this is the most important, that it's cheap? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, 7. Hands up individual, you and okay, 1, 2. Okay, 2. Battery? 1, 2. Okay. Open? Okay, people, alright, let's go for the open people first. Alright, so if you say that battery open and cheap, okay, so this is open, this is cheap, right? And you are saying that open, this gentleman here, I'm going to ask this gentleman, right? So this is more important than this, yes? Say stop. Ah, okay. Who else said open? Which other person said? Okay, so you say, okay, so tell me stop. Say stop. Which is more important? How much more important? This is open, this is cheap. Say stop. Ah! Okay, because now we have a much different essay. Right? That he is saying, really, what he is saying is that open for him is vital. Right? That it is the most important thing. Yes? Right? She is saying that open is quite important. Right? Yes? Not very important, but quite important. Right? Somebody else might be saying, in terms of cheap, that cheap is very important. Right? So this is talking about priority. Right? So if you say the vital reason for buying an Android phone instead of an iPhone is because it is open, you have a very different essay from open is very important. Right? Whereas if you say there are a number of reasons for not buying an iPhone. The first reason is it is open. The second reason is it has a good battery. The third, the tutor is going to fall asleep. Right? The tutor is going to go, please, okay? Write in a different way. So, what we are trying to do is to get the students to write in a way that makes the position clear. Okay? So, with objectivity, we're using no reference to the writer, we're evaluating the evidence, it will be biased, we're going through these faster as we go through. We're emphasizing the information, which means that you are noun-based again, but this time it's in terms of paragraphing. So we're moving this again. Now, what I would hope that you would be recognizing is that as we are going through these things, more and more of them are coming over to this area here. Right? We have more and more aspects or features of academic English that are focused on task response. Right? Not so many focused on lexical resource or grammar, more and more focused on task response. Are we going through? Task response, patient adherence, accuracy. Okay. Edging, again, coming over to task response. And responsibility is almost all task response. Right? So one argument that I'm going to be making here is that academic English is a lot about task response. In that, if you are a content tutor, when you are marking something, what you are often most interested in is, has the student answered the question? Has the student addressed each of the tasks in the question? Right? You are not so concerned with the grammar or the vocabulary of this. You're much more concerned with the areas of responsibility, hedging, and explicitness. That's all. Right? So, in terms of the, yes, you can. That's right. So, in terms of students, what I would emphasize, and what I emphasize to my students, both on in-sessional courses and on pre-sessional courses, is one of the most important things for you to do is to recognize what the task requires, what things you have to do to complete the task, before you start thinking about the structure, or the grammar, or the vocabulary. Because if you write a wonderful essay that is fantastically structured, has great grammar, but doesn't answer the question, you will fail. Now, to a certain extent in Russia, as far as I understand it, you can defend your dissertation or your piece of work and explain what you meant and how it is related to the title. In England, you can't do that. In the UK, we have no defense until you get to PhD level. Right? There is no oral defense. There is no discussion with the tutor about this. It is just the written word. And so that's where we come back to this area of how we go from writing into speaking, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about next, is how writing and speaking are different academically, and how writing and speaking are different generally, right? So I'm conscious that I have now been speaking for about 30 minutes, right? So what I would like you to do is just to, talking to each other or thinking to yourself, tell me, how is writing different from speaking generally? What is the main difference? If you were teaching a student and saying you are writing as if you were speaking, how would you explain to them the main difference between writing and speaking? Right? Thinking about it 1 minute, and then I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are. So 1 minute to think, and then you can tell me. Okay, so, in terms of speaking, how is speaking different from writing? What would you say is the main difference between speaking and writing? Anybody? Volunteer? Yes? Okay, so we could say that writing is static, right? And because writing is static, it's more dense and it's more complex. Yes? And you can go over it again and again and again, and that means that you can make it more complex because you can go over it again and again and again. Yes? Anything else? Okay, so it's more complex and more logical. Okay. Anything else? Yes. Okay, so the complex here, and that is related to being static in terms of the grammar. Yep. Okay, and the range of vocabulary is because. Okay, so you have so it's Right? So I would say that's because it's permanent. It's not just static, it's not just fixed, but it's also permanent. Right? Now, if you would like more information about this, then what I would suggest is going to Rebecca Hughes, Teaching and Researching Speaking. The teaching and researching series of books are fantastic for teachers. Right? If you want a good series of books which presents the research and then the use of the research, I would strongly recommend these. Right? They do teaching and researching writing, teaching and researching autonomy, teaching and researching everything. Right? And they are a very, very, very good combination of theory and practice. Right? Extensive theory by experts in the field. But I'm just going to summarize what Rebecca Hughes has said, and what she's doing is talking about them in different ways. Right? Now, yeah, if you turn over that piece of paper, you'll see on the back you have this picture. And what I'm going to be doing is talking again about these features in terms of how they work moving from writing to speaking, from speaking to writing. Right? Because what I believe that you need to be able to do with the students is to explain to them using one framework how academic English works. Right? So if, for example, a student is writing as they would speak, it's no good just saying to them, you are writing too much as you speak. You have to be able to explain what that means. Right? And so that's what I'm going to try and do here. And one of the reasons that I'm talking to you about this is because my impression of Russian students is that this is one of the fundamental problems they have in an English academic situation, is that they often write as they speak. Partly because you have this wonderful system that almost no other part of the world has, where you defend your dissertation. Right? I have students coming to me, when I give them a piece of work, they come to me and they want to discuss their mark. And they say, what I meant was, and I say, I don't care. And they say, no, but let me explain. When I said this, I meant blah, and I don't care. Right? In an English system, you cannot explain what you meant. Right? There is no second chance. There is no defense of your assignment. Right? The University of East Anglia at the moment has a case that is in the European court and has been pursued by a student for 15 years. 15 years the student has been disagreeing with their mark. And each time the court has said, it doesn't matter, you have no argument. And each time the student has taken it to a higher court. Guess what nationality the student is? Okay? Because the student is saying, I need to be able to defend my answer. Right? So often I have to explain to students, no, it's not speaking. Speaking is fundamentally different from writing. And it's different in these ways. Right? So we said it's static. Right? So because it's static, it has to be precise, it has to be accurate, it has to be explicit. You have to present the argument explicitly, the point of view explicitly. This essay will argue, this thesis will show that. Right? When I tell Russian students, you have to say that in the first or second sentence, they look at me like, are you stupid? Right? And I say, no, I'm not stupid, I'm English. Right? English people are not stupid, they are very simple. Okay? We are a very simple race of people. We are not very complex. Right? We present an argument, we follow that argument. We give examples, we give evidence. Russian speakers, on the other hand, they present an argument, they start the paragraph with one topic, and then they go and talk about another topic that is completely different. For an English person, totally unrelated. And then they come back to the first topic. And they connect it. And then they go away again to another topic. And then I'm like, what are you doing? And the student says, I am showing you the world. I'm like, I don't want to know the world. I'm a very simple person. I'm not stupid, I'm simple. Right? Give me the topic, give me the explanation, give me the argument, give me the evidence, give me the example. Stop! Then move to another topic in a new paragraph. Not the same paragraph, a new paragraph with a new topic. And when you have the new topic, then you explain, you give evidence, you give an example. Simple people, simple structure. Right? So you are, and this is partly, the difference for us between speaking and writing. Okay? So we are showing responsibility because it's static. Right? We can show the evidence, we can show the example. Again, in terms of, we're talking here about it being the difference between non-transients and transients, right? Between being permanent and transitory. Right? So if it is non-transient, if it's permanent, then we can indicate the sources. We can tell people what the evidence is, what the examples are, right? Because they can follow it, they can trace it. Right? We can be explicit, we have to be accurate, we have to be precise. Right? So again, what I do with my students is I come back to this framework and I explain to them the way you are writing is too close to speech. Because you are doing this, you have to use these different ways of writing. You have to be more accurate, you have to be more explicit, and what I show them is this, and I say to them, when I mean explicit, when I say explicit, I mean this. You have to do this, and give them the examples. Right? So, we are moving through this, right? And we are saying that because it's decontextualized, it has to be more precise, it has to be more explicit. Right? I'm running through this quickly because the British Council will have a screencast of this, of me explaining this in much more detail. So if you're interested in the difference between writing and speaking, you can look at that in more detail. Right? I'm conscious that I only have about 10 minutes left, and what I want to do is to get on to the final area, which is talking about how we move from writing and speaking, writing and speaking to reading and listening. Right? That, in my opinion, one of the major problems that students have and that teachers have is that students, when they are reading, focus on the wrong thing. Right? When they are reading or when they are listening, they are focusing on the wrong area. Now, what I mean explicitly is that most of the teaching that we do, most of the course books that we use, emphasize 3 areas of IELTS. Right? What they emphasize is this. Right? Is cohesion and coherence, lexical resource, grammar and vocabulary. So if you look at the course books, they don't ask students about tasks. They don't talk to students about titles. They talk to students about, do you understand the vocabulary? Do you understand how the text is organized? Do you understand and can you answer questions? But when a student is reading, that's not their purpose. Right? So very often when I'm talking to students, I say to them, can you show me the research that you are doing? Right? And the student says, yes, of course. And they come, and they say, this is the research I am doing. And I say, okay, what's this? And they say, it is a book. I say, one book? They say, yes, it's a very thick book. I say, what? Well, you're reading one book? And they say, yes, look, it's a very difficult book. It's thick, and it's difficult. Right? As if this isn't enough reason. Right? And I say to them, well, okay, but you realize that when you do your writing, you will need to refer to 30, 40, 50 sources. And they're like, huh? But this is a thick book. It has much information. And yes, I know it has much information, but you can't use one book. And then they say, why not? Because you can't. Right? So what I emphasize to students and to teachers increasingly is that we need to focus more on task response. We need to look at reading and listening in terms of what the task requires of the students. Right? So what we are doing is looking at these areas, and what students should be doing is looking at these areas and figuring out what the task requires. Right? What is my position? What is my evidence? When you are reading a text, really, it doesn't matter if you understand the whole text, as long as you understand the section that is related to your essay, to your title. Right? In a perfect world, yes, you would understand all the texts and you would do all the reading, but let me tell you, if you try to do that, you will end up with so much information that you will struggle to put it all into your essay. And if you read in such depth, you will end up, as I said, talking about topics that might not be related to each other. Right? So, to give you my final example on the board, right? I had students talking to me about 2 weeks ago, and they came to me and they said, Tony, we have a problem. And I said, okay, tell me what the problem is. And they said, Tony, we have been given an essay title, and we don't understand the essay title. And I said, okay, tell me what the essay title is. The essay title that they had was, the BBC is the mouthpiece of the political elite. Discuss. That was all they had. Now, as a tutor, I'm looking at that and going, oh my God, how do I help these students? What do I do? Because they have to understand so much in order to do this. Right? They have to be able to know what they need to do in terms of this before they can even start researching, before they can start reading. So very often what I do is I talk to students about Bloom's taxonomy. Hands up, how many people here know about Bloom's taxonomy? Bloom's taxonomy was a very basic system that was developed in the 1950s, 1956 when he first published it. And what Bloom was saying was that education works at different levels. At the basic level, you have description, where you are just describing what you know, right? So for instance, things like definition, right? And then you explain. You don't just give the definition, you explain what the definition means. And then you analyze, and then you evaluate, and then you create, right? So what I say to students is that this is a very useful system for understanding what you have to do here, what your task is, right? So in terms of this question, there are things that we have to define, right? There are things that a student would have to decide, I need a definition for this. I need to tell the tutor, this is what I understand by this. So, in terms of this, BBC is the mouthpiece of the political elite. What do you think we need to define? Do we define BBC? Hands up, yes? We define BBC. No? Do we need to define mouthpiece? Yes, okay, so we define mouthpiece. We need a definition. What does it mean, mouthpiece? Do we define political elite? Okay? So we define political elite, right? So that's a good start, because we know we need to research these definitions. Do we need to explain political elite? Okay, in terms of what? What do we explain? It's a difficult question. She's a scientist. What happens here? What would you explain about the political elite? You put up your hand. Okay, you could explain the system, yeah, or you could explain the functions. Right? What do they do? Right? And you could explain the function of the BBC. Right? And one function of the BBC might be as a mouthpiece. You could say the BBC has the function of delivering information. The BBC has the function of entertaining. The BBC has the function of this. Right? And you would take these functions and you would evaluate them. Right? So this is your analysis. This is your evaluation. And from that evaluation, you decide, is the BBC a mouthpiece? Yes, no, maybe. But you need to go through those stages. And those stages decide your research. Right? Research is not about reading. Research is about deciding what to read and why you are reading it. Right? If you just read and read and read as a student, or I know as a teacher, if you read and read and read, you would have no life. Yeah? And I know many teachers will be sitting here and saying, yes, I know, I have no life. I spend all of my time reading. Right? But what I'm arguing here is that this can help students to understand what the purpose in terms of reading and listening is of academic English, right? How they should read, what they should be reading for. Right? So I think that these features relate to reading, to writing, to listening, and to speaking. Right? I think that what we have talked about here is also related to critical is also related to critical thinking. Right? What it's not related to so much is study skills. Right? And study skills is an area of English that I think warrants a lot more discussion, a lot more study. If you'd like more discussion of that, you can either email me there at t.prince@at.uk, or you can go on the Nile website, book on one of our courses. I would be happy to have you on the courses. Other than that, I'm finished, and I will now be happy to take questions. Okay, so that's me finished. Thank you very much. Are there any aspects of this that you have any questions about? Okay, let me do this, because when I leave people, and I'll give you 2 minutes to talk to each other, then you can discuss and say, we have a question. Not I have a question, but we have a question. You know, group solidarity. So, 2 minutes while I have something to drink. Discussing, thinking if you have any questions. And I have 10, 15 minutes. Yes, please do email me. Don't worry about it. So Masha and I are catching a train tonight back to Moscow. So we do have to leave at 6 o'clock. But until 6 o'clock, I have time to answer your questions. So, any questions that anybody has? Yes.
You were talking about English for students and teachers. What about English for researchers? Are there some special features?
Researchers in terms of PhD or after PhD?
I mean PhD mostly.
My working with students who are PhD level. Again, what I have found is that it comes back. I think it comes back again to this. That a lot of it is about making sure that what you are doing is responding to the task that you have set yourself. Right now, at PhD level, you are very often negotiating, discussing with your tutor where you need to go next, but very often what the tutor is saying is, well, you haven't, for instance, you're not providing enough evidence, or you're not evaluating that evidence, right? I was working with a student recently who was finishing a PhD for translation studies, and she had given a lot of citations. You know, she citation after citation after citation after citation, and what the tutor was saying to her was, is all the evidence equally valid? Is it all of equal importance? And she was saying, well, no, of course not. And he was saying, but this citation is one paragraph, and this citation is one paragraph, and this citation is one paragraph. It looks like it's all the same value. And she was saying, well, it's not. Well, then show it. Show it in how much time you spend on it, show it in terms of how you introduce it, how you connect it, how you explain it. It's not just, again, it comes back to Bloom's taxonomy. It's not just about describing what you have read or what sources you are using. It's connecting them, it's evaluating them, and it's using them to justify that position. But very often when I read through the work of even PhD students is that they might have an idea of what their position is, but they're not explicitly showing how the evidence is connected to that position. So it kind of starts the position, and then it goes away, and it doesn't come back. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. That's the same applies to science. We're talking about some humanities.
That was translation studies.
Translation.
That was translation studies. In working with the environmental science tutors, what they are indicating is that you are still evaluating the evidence, you're still evaluating the argument, but it might not be in the same fashion of assessing whether it's good or bad in the same way as translation studies. So I would say not so much, but I'm not enough of a science of translation. Any other questions? Nobody has any questions? Okay, I will be here for another 10 minutes. If you would like to ask me questions, fine. If you want to email me, I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you're embarrassed to ask me in person. Or if you want to write me a long, detailed series of questions, yes. If there are any students who feel that they want to send me their essay so I can tell them whether it's academic, guess again. Take that to your tutor. Don't ask me. Okay, but thank you very much. If you have questions, I'll be here for another 10 minutes, so come and ask. Yes, ma'am. Easiest thing to email me, because I can send you links to websites, but it's easier if I send you the links than I can use. Yeah. Email me and just specify what area it is that you would want to focus on. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. you. Which one? Wait.
А?
And what he has done books that are more theoretical, which he's written a book called genre analysis. Genre analysis is the theory. I'm not sure. You can go online and find examples of it. This is the theory, and this is practical for teachers and for students. Hello. Okay. Yes. I think that the level of English that the teachers and the students is fantastic. What I'm impressed with is the engagement with different aspects of teaching and learning in terms of how interested teachers are in learning new methods, learning about different aspects, but also how engaged they have already been with those subjects. So I'm not coming here to teach people, more I'm coming to learn what they are doing, to make suggestions of how they could extend that. It's more a discussion. Like, I find that they are very, very I think, as I said in the lecture, what I would advise is that a focus on the task response. In other words, on understanding what the task means and how you need to answer that task is very often